History is written by the victors, but it is also shaped by the images they create. In the 1930s, the world saw two leaders promising a brighter future. One built gleaming new cities and hosted a world united by sport. He was seen as the savior of his nation. The other promised to lift the common man from poverty, creating an industrial superpower where everyone was equal. He was called the little father of the people. But behind the perfect image was a secret reality. Behind the savior was a plan for mass murder. Behind the father was a system of famine and slavery. How did these two men build empires on lies? And what happened when their lies finally collided? The summer of 1945. We are in Red Square in Moscow. In the center of the Soviet Empire, a great victory parade is happening. The leaders of the Soviet Union watch from the Kremlin Palace. The famous Red Army is celebrating its victory over Nazi Germany. Following an old tradition from the Roman Empire, soldiers throw the flags of their defeated enemy on the ground. They throw them at the feet of the winner. This was the man who beat Adolf Hitler, Generalissimo Joseph Stalin. After 20 years in power, the leader of the Soviet Union was at the height of his power and glory. A poet wrote about him, "Stalin, you are higher than the sky, and only your thoughts are greater than you. Your spirit, Stalin, is brighter than the sun." They called him the little father of the people. Around the world, he was a symbol of hope for a more fair society. He was a hero to hundreds of millions of people. But the world did not know the real story. In reality, this hero was one of the greatest criminals in history. He ruled his own people with extreme cruelty. He once said, "We will destroy anyone who threatens the unity of the state, not just with their actions, but even with their thoughts." He created the Gulag, a huge system of prison camps. He turned 18 million of his own citizens into slaves. He believed that bad members of the party must be cut away, like a disease. He purposely caused famines that killed 7 million people. His idea was simple and cold. As he said, "Death solves all problems. No person, no problem." His power was so important to him that he sacrificed his own family for it. He believed that a true revolutionary, a true Bolshevik, should not have a family. This is the incredible story of a poor shoemaker's son who became one of the most powerful men in the world. This is the story of how a man who promised to bring happiness to his people became one of the deadliest dictators ever known, all because of his ego and extreme beliefs. At the exact same time, another dictator was rising in power with his own dark plans for the world. His name was Adolf Hitler. He coldly said that the next war would end with the extermination of the Jews. For Hitler, war was not just politics, it was his destiny. He did not take orders from his generals. He said that he alone would decide when to attack. He said, "This is my mission." The story of these two terrible leaders truly begins in 1924. We are near Moscow, in the middle of the cold Russian winter. Lenin, the father of the Russian Revolution, is dead. His death created a fight for power. The man expected to win was Leon Trotsky, a smart and popular leader. But another man was quietly making plans. He was Joseph Stalin. Using his job as general secretary, Stalin made deals and pushed his enemies away. He skillfully moved against Trotsky and finally sent him away to the distant land of Kazakhstan. Nobody expected it, but a few weeks later, Stalin took complete control. He would hold on to this power for the rest of his life. He chose to live and work in the Kremlin, the old fortress of Russia's kings. From here, he would rule the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. It was the biggest country on earth. With a small group of loyal followers, he would rule for almost 30 years. While Stalin built his empire in the east, a different kind of storm was growing in the west. Germany had lost World War I and was now a country in chaos. The Treaty of Versailles had punished the nation, forcing it to pay huge amounts of money and limiting its army. The economy was destroyed. More than 1/3 of all workers were unemployed. One unemployed man remembered how this desperation pushed people to join radical groups. He said that honest people had to steal just to eat. He said, "That's why I joined the National Socialist Party." By September 1934, the National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party, had been in power for 20 months. Its leader, Adolf Hitler, had moved quickly. He had destroyed all other political parties. The police and the courts now answered only to him. Hitler had all the power. He spoke to his followers with great passion. He told them that even if they could not see each other, they were all connected. He said,
"We are together, and together we are Germany."
In September 1935, Hitler passed the Nuremberg Laws. These new laws made German Jews into second-class citizens and took away their rights. This poison even spread to schools. Children were taught that you could recognize a Jewish person by the shape of their nose. While Hitler showed his ideas to the world, Stalin remained a mystery. He spent his time locked in his office and kept his private life a secret. These are the only photos that exist of his wife, Nadezhda. She was a fellow revolutionary and was 22 years younger than him. They had 2 children, a son named Vasily and a daughter named Svetlana. He did not spend much time with them, but he had a special love for his daughter. In one letter, she wrote to him,
"I don't care if the whole world hates you, I will love you no matter what."
but for the rest of the country, the dream of communism was becoming a nightmare. In August 1936, Adolf Hitler opened the Olympic Games in Berlin. He wanted to use the Games to show the world a new, powerful, and peaceful Germany. For a short time, the Nazi government hid its dark side. All anti-Jewish signs were taken down. All talk of war disappeared from the newspapers. A Jewish professor named Victor Klemperer wrote in his diary that it was all a disgusting mask designed to trick foreign visitors. But many German people were very impressed. They believed their leader had brought order and respect back to their country. During these years, Hitler also kept a secret from the German people. He had a mistress named Eva Braun. She was hidden from public life. Her private diary shows she was often unhappy. She wrote,
"The weather is so beautiful, and I, the mistress of the most powerful man in the world, must sit here and watch the sun from a window."
She tried to commit suicide 2 times, but Hitler still refused to marry her. He believed a wife would get in the way of his mission. He once said that in his free time, he wanted peace, and that marriage would ruin his special connection with the women who admired him. While Hitler was worried about his image, Stalin was busy getting rid of anyone he saw as a threat. In Moscow, he held famous show trials. One of his most famous victims was Nikolai Bukharin, one of the original revolutionary leaders. After weeks of torture, Bukharin was forced to say in court that he was guilty of terrible crimes he did not commit, including treason. The court quickly found him guilty. The sentence was death. Stalin's purges did not stop with the old leaders. He turned on his own army and executed thousands of his best officers. In the countryside, his policies created a terrible, man-made famine, especially in Ukraine. In a sad letter to his son in Moscow, one father wrote that his wife had died of starvation after months of suffering. Some loyal party members in the area could not believe what was happening. They sent messages to Moscow, thinking that Stalin must not know about the famine, but Stalin knew. He had planned it. At the same time, The Soviet government pretended everything was wonderful. It released fake news reports about the country's success. It invented heroes, like a miner named Alexei Stakhanov. The government claimed he had mined 14 times more coal than anyone else. It was a complete lie, made up to push workers harder. The Soviet Union had become a giant police state. Stalin's spies were everywhere. They were given quotas, a target number of people to arrest, put in prison, or execute. The process was based on terror and random chance. A local official would receive a list with numbers, but no names. It was his job to find victims to meet the quota. One file from the police archives shows how it worked. A man named Asilarov was accused of speaking against the Soviet government. The verdict was simple: shoot Asilarov and take all of his property. While Stalin built his power on terror, Hitler was looking outside of Germany's borders. In September 1937, he welcomed another dictator to Berlin, Italy's Benito Mussolini. Hitler was building a new military alliance. In public, he said he only wanted peace. He claimed that Germany's new army was only for defense. But in front of Mussolini, he proudly showed off his powerful new army, the Wehrmacht. It was built in secret, breaking the rules of the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler was born in Austria, and he always dreamed of making his home country part of a greater Germany. On March 12, 1938, his dream came true. Nazi soldiers marched into Austria. This event, called the Anschluss, met almost no resistance. An Austrian soldier remembered that the streets were filled with people waving Nazi flags. They believed Germany had saved them. A few months later, Hitler looked at Czechoslovakia. He demanded control of a region with many German-speaking people, called the Sudetenland. The leaders of Britain and France were desperate to avoid another war. They met Hitler in the city of Munich and agreed to his demands. Hitler saw this as a sign of weakness. He lied and said, "This is the last piece of land I will demand in Europe." The path to war was now clear. In Moscow, Stalin watched Hitler's actions and became very worried. For years, he had seen the Western countries as his main enemy, but now he saw that Nazi Germany was a bigger, more immediate threat. His purges had weakened the Red Army, his weapons were old, the Soviet Union was not ready for war. In a desperate and shocking move, Stalin decided to make a deal with the man he hated most. On August 23, 1939, the world was shocked to hear that Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union had signed a non-aggression pact. This meant they promised not to attack each other. In a secret part of the agreement, the two dictators agreed to divide Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe between them. Now, Hitler's eastern border was safe. He was free to act. Just 1 week later, on September 1st, 1939, German tanks crossed the border into Poland. 2 days later, Britain and France kept their promise to Poland and declared war on Germany. Adolf Hitler had started the Second World War. The invasion of Poland was swift and brutal. In just 3 weeks, the country was defeated. Hitler arrived to congratulate his victorious troops. As part of the secret deal with Hitler, Stalin's Red Army invaded Poland from the east. The nation of Poland disappeared, divided between the two dictators. For the next few months, Europe was strangely quiet. This period was called the Phony War, but in the spring of 1940, Hitler launched a surprise attack. His armies swept through Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and finally, into France. The French and British armies were caught by surprise. Hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers were trapped at the French port of Dunkirk. In a heroic effort, over 300,000 soldiers were rescued by the fleet of military and civilian boats from Britain, but France was now alone. On June 22, 1940, France surrendered. Hitler celebrated his greatest victory. He stood in the same railway car where Germany had surrendered in 1918 and forced the French to sign their defeat. Now, only Great Britain stood against him. Hitler planned to invade Britain, but first, he needed to control the skies. The Battle of Britain began. The German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, began bombing British airfields and cities. Young pilots on both sides fought bravely in the skies. One German pilot, Ulrich Steinhilfer, remembered how difficult the fighting was. He said, "The British have a new engine in their Spitfires, and we can hardly keep up." A week later, he was shot down over Britain. When British Prime Minister Winston Churchill ordered the bombing of German cities, Hitler became furious. He switched his attacks from military targets to British civilians, bombing London and other cities every night. He promised to drop hundreds of thousands of bombs for every 1,000 that fell on Germany. While the war raged in the West, Stalin used the opportunity to expand his own empire. He annexed the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and took land from Romania. But Hitler had always seen the Soviet Union as his ultimate enemy. He hated communism, and he wanted the vast lands of the East for Germany, a concept he called Lebensraum, or living space. In a secret meeting, Hitler told his generals his plan. On June 22, 1941, exactly 1 year after France's surrender, Hitler launched the largest land invasion in history, Operation Barbarossa. Over 3 million German soldiers attacked the Soviet Union along a massive front. Stalin was in complete shock. His spies had warned him that an attack was coming, but he refused to believe it. He had trusted his deal with Hitler. He called one spy a disinformer and told him to go to hell. The German army moved with incredible speed. They destroyed much of the Soviet Air Force on the ground and pushed deep into Russian territory. Entire Soviet armies were surrounded and captured. Hitler was confident. He said, "What India is for Britain, Russia will be for us." He believed he could divide and rule the giant country. By October 1941, just 4 months after the invasion began, the German army was only a few miles from Moscow. The capital city was bombed every day. The people hid in the subway stations. Panic filled the city. There were rumors that Stalin had been arrested. For 2 weeks, Stalin disappeared from public view. He was crushed by the disaster, but then he returned. He gave a powerful speech calling on the Russian people to fight a great patriotic war to defend their motherland. Just as the Germans were about to take Moscow, the brutal Russian winter arrived. Temperatures dropped to -30 degrees. The German soldiers were not prepared. Their machines froze. Their winter clothes were not warm enough. The attack on Moscow stopped. The next year, in the summer of 1942, Hitler changed his goal. He sent his army south, toward the rich oil fields of the Caucasus. To protect the side of his army, he ordered his 6th Army to capture a city on the Volga River. The city was named Stalingrad. The battle for Stalingrad was one of the bloodiest in history. Soldiers fought for every street, every building, and every room. But Hitler had stretched his army too far. In November 1942, the Soviet Red Army launched a massive counterattack called Operation Uranus. They surrounded the entire German 6th Army, 300,000 men, inside the city. Hitler ordered his general, Friedrich Paulus, to fight to the death. He refused to let them surrender. But trapped, freezing, and starving, the German soldiers had no hope. In February 1943, they finally surrendered. The defeat at Stalingrad was a turning point in the war. For the first time, the Nazi war machine had been stopped. From this moment on, the Red Army began to push the Germans back. For the next 2 years, they fought their way west, back towards Germany. In June 1944, the Western Allies, America, Britain, and Canada, launched the D-Day invasion, opening a second front in France. Now, Hitler was trapped, fighting a war on 2 sides. As Allied armies closed in, they discovered the full horror of Hitler's regime. They liberated concentration and extermination camps like Auschwitz and Buchenwald. They found proof of the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others. By the spring of 1945, The Red Army had reached Berlin. Stalin ordered his soldiers to destroy the German capital as revenge for Stalingrad. After weeks of brutal fighting, Germany finally surrendered on May 8, 1945. In the ruins of the Nazi government buildings, soldiers found Hitler's underground bunker. It was empty. After finally marrying his mistress, Eva Braun, Adolf Hitler had committed suicide. With Hitler gone, Stalin was the last dictator standing. He met with the Allied leaders Winston Churchill and American President Harry Truman at the Potsdam Conference. Having liberated Eastern Europe from the Nazis, Stalin demanded control over it. The Allies agreed. The Soviet Union's rule over Eastern Europe would begin, and it would last for nearly 50 years. The price of victory for the Russian people was enormous. The war had destroyed 70,000 villages and killed 26 million people. After the war, Stalin's paranoia only grew worse. He launched new purges, even turning against the heroes of the war. He became deeply anti-Semitic, believing there was a Jewish conspiracy against him. At a celebration, a little girl was chosen to read a poem to the supreme leader. The room cheered for the touching moment, but the girl did not know a cruel secret. A few years earlier, Stalin had ordered her own mother to be shot. At the age of 70, the little father of the peoples felt more powerful than ever. He asked his inner circle, "What would you do without me? You are blind. You are little kittens. You cannot see the enemy." The two most destructive dictators in history had gone to war. One was defeated and died by his own hand. The other stood victorious, but his victory had built an empire of fear that would cast a long, dark shadow over the world for decades to come. When the guns fell silent in 1945, one dictator lay dead in a bunker, his country in ashes. The other stood victorious, the ruler of a new superpower. But what does victory truly mean? For the German people, defeat brought devastation, but also liberation, a chance to rebuild and face the crimes of their past. For the Russian people, victory brought pride, but not freedom. They had defeated one tyrant, only to be trapped more firmly in the grip of another. Their suffering did not end in 1945. Hitler's war was a sprint of unimaginable violence that burned out in 6 years. Stalin's war against his own people was a marathon of terror that lasted for 30. So we are left with a difficult truth. A world without Hitler was necessary, but what was the cost of a world shaped by Stalin?